You shouldn't be out here alone. The voice cut through the downpour like the edge of a blade low. Steady, unshakable Dot Elise Whitmore froze. Rain lashed against her skin, slicing through her coat like needles of ice. Her fingers, pale and trembling, clutched the handle of a cane she barely used. She didn't need it, at least not in her world. At home, she knew the rhythm of every step, the whisper of each creaking floorboard, the stubborn groan of the rusted iron gate at the estate entrance. But this wasn't her world. Tonight, she'd fled it, her heels soaked, her coat plastered to her back, breath ragged with something more violent than the storm of grief that had no name, a desperation she couldn't swallow. "I'm fine," she snapped, her voice brittle, but proud. "No, you're not." And then her knees buckled. The pavement rose like a fist to meet her. Her cane slipped from her hand and skittered away, clanging uselessly into the gutter. Feet passed. Umbrellas swarmed around her like ghosts, but no one paused. No one, except him. Jack Lawson had no reason to be there. His janitorial shift at St. Martin's should have ended 2 hours earlier. But one of the night crew had called in sick, and Jack silent. Dependable Jack had filled in. He always did, always slipped into the spaces others left behind. Quiet, unseen, unthanked Dot until tonight. He dropped beside her, rain soaking through his worn uniform. Her dark hair clung to her cheeks like silk, her body shivering beneath the soaked designer coat. But what arrested his breath wasn't her high cheekbones or the glinting clutch. She refused to release. It was the necklace, a silver crescent moon, dulled with age, familiar, achingly familiar. His chest tightened. "No, it couldn't be. Miss, can you hear me?" She nodded faintly, her lips parted, but no words came. He shrugged off his jacket, wrapping it gently around her fragile shoulders. Without hesitation, he lifted her in his arms, clutching her close against the cold. The hospital doors hissed open at the touch of his ID badge. Light spilled over them, harsh and clinical, but Jack moved through the chaos like a shadow, silent. Sure, a nurse turned at the sight of them, her eyes widened. She collapsed. Jack explained. "She's freezing, pulse is weak, skin's cold. Name? I don't know. I'll take it from here." The nurse said. Jack stepped back as they wheeled her away, the doors slamming shut behind her. But not before he caught one last look, a pale face, beautiful in its fragility, noble even in exhaustion. Then she was gone. He looked down. The necklace, somehow, it had come loose. He held it in his palm. The crescent moon glinted under the fluorescent glow. His heart stammered. In his pocket, he still carried its twin, the sun, a relic of a childhood that felt more dream than memory of time when fireflies were treasure, and laughter came from a girl with wind-chime giggles and a scar on her wrist. From climbing a fence to high. "Don't be an idiot," he whispered. "It's just a necklace. They mass-produce these things." But his hand wouldn't stop shaking. Elise blinked, disoriented under the sterile glare of emergency room lights. "Miss Whitmore," a voice said, professional, dispassionate. "You're at St. Martin's. You collapsed. We've stabilized your vitals. I want to go home." She murmured, voice threadbare. "You'll need to rest first. You were severely dehydrated. Your blood pressure. Call my driver." Pause. "He's already on his way." She let the breath escape slowly, too aware of the emptiness on her skin. Her hand moved to her throat, blindly seeking what was no longer there. "My necklace," she said sharply. "The crescent. It's missing. We didn't receive it with your belongings. It might have fallen. I never drop it." Her voice, soft as velvet, cut with steel. The nurse flinched. "Well, check the records." Elise turned her face away. It wasn't just jewelry. That pendant had been her anchor, her only tangible link to a childhood lived more in sensation than in sight. She couldn't see the past, not literally, but she felt it. A boy, laughter like a lighthouse in fog, hands that warmed hers, a promise whispered beneath a canopy of stars. But that boy had been lost to time, to growing up, to forgetting until tonight. Jack didn't sleep. At 3 a.m., He sat alone in a hospital chapel, elbows resting on his knees, the pendant resting between his fingers. Outside, city lights bled through stained glass, casting fractured colors. Across his face, his daughter, Leia, had once asked him, "Daddy, do you think some people are born with pieces missing?" He'd said no. He wasn't sure anymore, because lately something in him felt hollow. And maybe, just maybe, that missing piece had walked back into his life. Wearing heels and a crescent moon dot at sunrise, Elise was discharged. No fanfare, only reverence to the name etched on her ID band. Whitmore, the SUV purred at the curb, waiting to swallow her back into a life of expectations and glass walls. But just as she was about to step in, something made her turn. There he was, framed by the hospital's glass doors, bathed in morning light. Janitor uniform, damp with work and weather. Tall, still, watching. Their eyes met. Neither of them moved. Then, like a reflex built from years of rehearsed defiance, Elise lifted her chin and elegant, tilt, learned from years of performing for rooms that never really saw her. She turned out, the doors shut behind her, but Jack didn't move. The moon sat heavy in his pocket, and somewhere deeper, the sun began to stir. Jack cleaned the surgical wing in silence, the only sound the rhythmic squeak of his mop across cold tiles. But his mind wasn't in the room. It was still caught in last night's storm, in the woman who collapsed like something sacred breaking. Elise Whitmore. Her name had once floated through hospital hallways in whispers. Philanthropist, heiress, untouchable. But last night, she wasn't untouchable. She was human, cold, lost, and somehow familiar. His hand brushed against the necklace in his pocket. He hadn't told anyone. He wouldn't. Some truths weren't meant for hospital files. Not yet. Light footsteps padded behind him. "Daddy." He turned instantly, softening. Leia stood there in an oversized hoodie, sleeves swallowing her hands, curls messily tied, shoes mismatched blue and purple again. Jack never corrected her. He never would. "I brought your lunch," she said, holding up a crumpled brown bag. "Did you make it?" he asked, already smiling. She nodded. "Peanut butter and one pickle." "One. You said there was two." "Many." He laughed soft, full of something almost like peace. They sat near the old piano in the physical therapy wing, Jack's favorite haven. Abandoned until noon, Leia kicked her legs, eyes on the keys. "Can I play?" Jack nodded. She climbed up, hands settling over the keys like prayer. The first note was a question. The next, a whisper, a lullaby that limped, then danced. Sad, yes, but also brave. Then a presence behind them. Elise. She wasn't sure why she'd wandered here. Her driver had tried to escort her. Her aunt had texted for times. "Where are you?" "Daniel's waiting. Do not embarrass us." But Elise had turned, following something, a sound, no, a feeling. She paused. The music stopped. Leia turned. Their eyes met. "I'm sorry," Elise said gently. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "You didn't," Jack replied, guarded but kind. "That was beautiful. Was it Chopin?" Leia shook her head. Jack answered, "Her own. She dreams melodies. She plays with her heart." Elise whispered, "Not her hands." Leia blinked. "Can she play?" she asked her father. Jack hesitated. "She can't see, so maybe she plays better than people who can." The words fell like gospel. Elise smiled, really smiled for the first time in what felt like years. Jack rose, cautious. "Miss Whitmore, I didn't expect to see you again. I didn't expect to return," she said. "But the music, it found me." Leia climbed off the bench and walked without fear straight to Elise. "You can sit with me," she said. "I'll show you how the keys feel." Jack tensed. But Elise, graceful, fragile, brave, let the girl guide her. Their fingers brushed. They sat side by side. Black keys are raised. Leia said softly, "White ones feel like marble." Elise traced them. "They feel like possibilities." She pressed a note, then another. Her fingers trembled, then steadied. Her world had always been sound, but this was music. Jack watched his daughter and the woman who felt less and less like a stranger. If you'd like, he said gently. We come here every morning, before meetings, before the world wakes up. Is that an offer? Elise asked. An invitation. Why? Her voice was barely audible. Why be kind to someone like me? Jack looked into her, not at her, into her. Because I know what it's like to carry a weight no one sees. And maybe you look like someone who forgot what warmth feels like. She was quiet. Then, softly, maybe I did, and something. Ancient passed between them, not romance. Not yet. Recognition. Like the souls brushing in a place words couldn't reach. Their hands met briefly. She didn't flinch. And in Jack's pocket, the sun warmed, waiting. Do you ever wonder who you were? Elise whispered, before the world told you who to be. Jack sat beside her on the old bench. Morning light slanted through the windows. Bathing the room in gold, Leia hummed nearby, lost in a world of stars and crayons. Jack exhaled. Yeah, I wonder that every day. Elise turned slightly. And who were you before? He looked at his calloused hands. A boy who ran too fast. A man who loved too deep. A father who didn't get to choose. And now, Jack smiled faintly. Now, I'm off floors and listen to what others step over. Elise leaned toward the piano, her fingers gently searching the keys. I used to think I was born into the wrong story, she whispered, and this time, Jack didn't speak because in the hush between her words, he finally heard the music. My life was once defined by marble floors and ceilings made of glass-gilded cages that gleamed under chandeliers, but never truly belonged to me. I was sculpted to be seen, not heard, groomed to deliver polished statements, never uncertain questions. I wore my smiles like war paint, concealing the battles raging behind my ribs. But Jack's voice, it had a softness that felt like truth, a quiet that said real was better than perfect even if it left bruises, even if it drew blood. Leia, with her small, urgent steps, approached. Her tiny fingers held up a piece of paper like it was sacred scripture. It's you too, she said proudly. Jack took the drawing from her, a child's rendering in crayon him and Elise at a piano, their figures barely contained by bold, hopeful lines. Between them sat a little girl, radiant in purple and blue, a smile stretching wider than the paper could hold. Jack's throat tightened. Emotion swelled behind his eyes. Elise reached forward, fingertips brushing the drawing like she could read the story it told through touch. What color is the piano? She asked softly. Brown, Leia replied. But when you play it, in my head, it turns gold. Elise froze. A subtle quake passed through her body, and her hand instinctively moved to her collarbone. The pendant, she whispered, still missing. Jack said nothing. She tilted her head toward the silence, catching what it didn't say. Did they find it? I don't think so, Jack replied evenly, but his fingers twitched near the pocket where it hid. A hush passed between them. There's something strange about all this, Elise murmured. Like I've lived this moment before. The scent of antiseptic, the warmth of light, the sound of music and crayons on paper. It's like a dream that keeps slipping away before I can grasp it. Jack studied her, every instinct aching to pull the pendant from his pocket, to say it was us, you and me, we were the dream. But something inside told him not yet. Maybe it's your mind trying to tell you something. He offered gently, or maybe, she said, I'm finally remembering who I was before I became a Whitmore. Leia looked up, curious. What's a Whitmore? Elise hesitated. It's a name, she said after a beat, a very heavy name. Leia wrinkled her nose. My name is Leia May Lawson. It's not heavy. Jack chuckled. That's because you carry it like a feather. Leia beamed, proud and unburdened, then skipped back to her crayons, her tiny feet dancing under the bench. Elise turned toward Jack again, her voice softer, more tentative. Can I ask you something personal? Jack nodded once. You speak like someone who's lived 1,000 lives. But when I asked who you were before, her words trailed off. You left something out. He looked down at the floor as if it could anchor him. I was married once, he said slowly, each word drawn from a deep, long buried wound. The air grew still, reverent. She died. Leia was only 2. Elise inhaled, barely audible. Cancer. Jack continued. It came quick, brutal. I sold everything, tried everything. In the end, I had to choose save the house or pay for one more experimental treatment. Elise's voice was barely a whisper, and you chose the treatment. Jack nodded, and she still died. Silence followed, not awkward. Sacred dot then. Elise reached for his forearm not out of pity, but something more tender, a silent recognition. I'm sorry, she said. That kind of love, it never really leaves, does it? No, Jack replied, but sometimes it makes space. Not to replace it, just to remind you, you're still alive. Elise leaned back, her expression unreadable. That's the most honest thing anyone said to me in 10 years. Jack gave a faint smile. Maybe you need to be around more. Honest people. She returned the smile, a flicker of realness blooming behind her lips. Maybe I do. Well, Jack shrugged. You're in luck. Janitors are the most brutally honest people on earth. We've seen everything cleaned. Everything. We know who you are when no one's watching. Elise laughed. A real laugh, fragile, but full. Then her phone buzzed. She reached into her purse, and Meredith flashed on the screen. She declined the call. Then, turning to Jack, her voice barely above a hush, do you think people can find each other again, even after decades? Jack didn't even blink. I don't just believe it, he said. I've been waiting for it. And as her breath caught in her throat, the pendant in his pocket pulsed with something ancient and tender, something alive. The elevator inside Whitmore Tower moved in ghostly silence. No ding. No mechanical lurch, just a quiet glide up 40 to stories of glass and power. Jack stood alone, his reflection mirrored a dozen times over in the polished steel. He had swapped his uniform for something older, a corduroy jacket, soft and faintly scented with pine and time. It clung to him like a memory that hadn't let go. The doors opened. He stepped into a world sharpened by wealth and sterilized ambition. Polished floors, glass walls, not a hair out of place. Inside a private conference room, Elise stood facing the window, her cane resting against a chair, the city stretching like a forgotten prayer behind her. I didn't know janitors wore corduroy, she said without turning. Jack let the door close behind him. Only when we're summoned, like suspects. She turned then, slowly, her face composed but searching. Her eyes, though sightless, felt like they were listening for something deeper than sound. I wanted to thank you, she said, and to ask why you never told me who you were. Jack tilted his head. Who do you think I am? You knew. My name the first night. I never said it. He remained silent. You clean floors, she continued. But you quote literature, no music theory, and speak like you've seen the inside of pain and beauty alike. She stepped closer. So are you just a janitor? Jack drew a breath. I'm a father, a man who's made mistakes, someone who remembers things others try to forget. She pulled something from her purse, a faded photograph. She handed it to him. It was them, a snapshot from a summer fair. Elise, maybe 7, her mother behind her, and beside her Jack, younger, laughing, holding a small silver pendant between his fingers. I found this in my father's safe, Elise said. It was labeled E and J, 1996. Jack stared down at it, his voice breaking. You remember? He whispered. Not everything, she admitted, but your voice, it feels like home, like something I used to trust. She looked up. You were important to me, weren't you? Jack nodded slowly. You were everything. But why didn't anyone tell me? Why did my father erase you? Jack looked down. Because he didn't think I was enough. He called me a phase, a charity case. He revoked my scholarship, returned every letter I wrote. Then your whole family vanished, and you never came back. I did, Jack said, twice, but you were gone. Different name, different city. When I asked, he said. He stopped. Elise's voice was sharp now. He said what? He said, she's blind now. She doesn't even remember you. Let the past rot where it belongs. She stumbled back, breathless. I spent years feeling like something was missing inside me. It was you. Jack nodded. I wore that pendant for years, she whispered. Then one day, it disappeared. I found it, Jack said, the night your limo almost hit me. It landed on the street like fake clearing its throat. He pulled it from his pocket. The chain glinted softly, unchanged. Elise reached for it with trembling hands, her breath uneven. I feel like I lost a lifetime, she said. You didn't, Jack replied. You just lived a different one. But now, maybe you get to choose. She clutched the pendant to her chest. What happens now? Jack smiled. Now, you remember. He turned to leave. Jack, she called out. He stopped. I want to remember everything, not just the music, not just the way your voice makes silence feel safe. Everything. He turned back. Then meet me tomorrow. Same piano, same time. I'll bring what's left of our story. You bring your heart. Rain kissed the high windows of the conservatory. A gentle percussion that made the world sound like memory. Jack and Elise sat beside each other at the piano. The bench creaked as they shifted, no longer children, no longer dreaming of someday, but survivors of parallel lives that had almost forgotten how to reach for each other. Jack laid a bundle of old letters across the bench. I kept writing, he said, even when I had nowhere to send them. Elise opened one. Dearie, it read, today the leaves turned gold. You always said autumn was music made visible. I walked through the park pretending you were next to me. I still remember how you tripped over your shoelaces chasing squirrels. You were so sure you were graceful. She laughed softly, tears brimming. I wrote one every week, then every month, then only when the silence got too loud. Elise turned toward him. My father didn't just take my sight. He stole my life. Jack shook his head. No, he tried, but you're here, and that means he failed. She looked at him. Do you really believe that? He leaned in. Elise, I mopped up blood at 3 a.m. I've sat with dying men who died alone. And through all of it, I still believe this. The heart remembers what the mind forgets. And yours never forgot me. A silence fell, heavy and holy. Elise spoke softly. Do you remember the last thing I said to you before I lost my sight? Jack nodded. You said, if I can't see you again, I hope I never forget what love sounds like. She covered her mouth as the tears came. He took her hand. You didn't forget, he whispered. You found it again. In the dark, you found your way back. The door creaked. Leia peeked in with a book and an apple. Are you crying again? She asked, wrinkling her nose. Elise smiled through tears. We might be. Is that okay? Jack grinned. Only if it's the kind of crying that makes you feel lighter after. Leia nodded and stepped into the room where the past had finally let go, and something new was ready to begin. Asterisk, sometimes I cry when I miss Mommy, Leia said, handing Elise a crisp apple. But then I draw, and it helps. The gesture was simple, but in that moment, it felt profound. Here, Leia insisted, you should eat. Elise accepted, moved not just by hunger, but by the kind of warmth that only a gesture like this can bring. Thank you, sweetheart, she said softly. You're welcome, Leia replied, matter of fact. Then, bold and eager, she added, Daddy, can we show her the old room? Jack slowed. Elise raised an eyebrow. Curious, old room? He smiled, uncertain. There's something I'd like to show you, but only if you're ready. Elise's tone sharpened, not impatient, but resolute. I'm tired of being sheltered from the truth. Show me. They rode in silence. The rain had passed, leaving streets gleaming like an oil painting dissolving at the edges. Jack pulled into a gravel driveway beneath weeping willows and turned. Off the engine, the house stood modest in serene soft gray-blue siding, warm golden light spilling from the windows. Elise placed her cane onto the stones and stepped carefully toward the entrance. Jack matched her pace, never providing his. On this time, he walked beside her present, equal inside. The air smelled of cinnamon and old paper. Leia vanished into a corner of the living room, her little throne of toys and pillows claiming her immediate domain. Jack led Elise down a narrow hallway. She paused at a wooden door. "This room's been locked for years," he said softly. He turned the knob slowly. Inside, the air felt thick with memory. A twin bed lay beneath a faded quilt, music sheets pinned meticulously to the wall, breathed with long-forgotten notes. On the desk sat a dusty music box, shaped like a violin. Elise stepped in, breath tightening. "This was my room." Jack nodded. "I rented this house the summer before everything changed," he explained, hesitation in his voice. "Your father didn't know. I wanted you to have a place where you could just be yourself, no expectations, no performance." Elise's fingers brushed the edge of the bed frame. "I used to play piano here. You'd make grilled cheese and sit on the floor while I practiced." Her voice flickered with emotion. "I remember now. You kissed me here, by the window," she faltered. Jack finished her thought. "You said, 'I don't care if the whole world forgets us, as long as you don't.'" Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I forgot," she said, voice brittle. Jack stepped closer. "No, you survived. That's different." He reached into his pocket and drew out a folded scrap of paper. "You wrote this." Elise took it. The paper was thin and faded with her own looping handwriting. "Jay, if I forget, find me. If I break, hold me. If I'm lost, wait, I'll come back." With trembling fingers, she pressed it to her heart. "You waited, always, in that small, dust-choked room filled with echoes of their past." Elise remembered who she was and who she had always been with him. The next morning, golden light washed over Whitmore Tower like a promise it didn't deserve. In her sleek corner office, her throne of glass and control, Elise felt something shift beneath her skin. She sat alone, quiet, tethered now not to empire, but to memory. The pendant lay on the desk beside her untouched espresso. In front of her lay a slim, heavy folder, whistleblower testimony against her father, evidence of manipulation, obstruction, coercion. She realized the man she had defended was the one who silenced the truth. Her assistant appeared at the open door. "Miss Whitmore, your father's here. He insists on seeing you." Elise's jaw tightened. "Send him in." Charles Whitmore strode in, arrogance trailing behind him like perfume. "You've been ignoring my calls." "I've been thinking," she replied firmly. "Something you carefully never let me do." He leaned over her desk. "What is this?" he demanded, eyes flicking over the folder. "You're giving a former janitor access to board meetings and giving him real influence." Elise met his glare unflinchingly. "You mean the man who saved my life more than once, the one your version of me erased?" He scoffed. "He was nothing. A teenage infatuation. Forgotten now." She held her ground. "He was my nobody, and you turned him into a ghost." Her voice rose, grief and fury lacing each word. "You silenced my letters, sabotaged his future. You told me he was the only one who made me feel whole, and you stole that away." Charles's face darkened. "This isn't about nostalgia, Elisa. It's about the company. Your reputation. Jack Holden is a liability." Elise slid the folder toward him. "No, a memory. I'm risking everything for the truth." She stood, steady with her cane. "You taught me silence was loyalty, that power was silence, but Jack taught me love doesn't hide. It fights, and now I choose to fight." She turned, leaving the folder behind. He remained seated as she walked out, her presence undoing everything he thought he controlled. Later, Jack paced outside the dusty recital hall at the community center. Leia sat cross-legged, crayons in hand. "She'll come," the little girl said confidently. "You think so?" he asked softly. "You said she used to hear music with her heart. If that's true, she might already be hearing you now." At that moment, the door opened. Elise stepped inside, no entourage, no polished pretense, vulnerable, radiant, whole. She carried the violin-shaped music box. Jack stopped. Elise approached slowly. "Sorry I'm late," she said with a wry smile. "I had to burn a few. Empire's on the way." "How'd it feel?" Jack asked gently, eliminating the past. "Felt necessary." She placed the music box on the piano. Jack settled beside her, and together They opened it and its imperfect melody filled the space. Soft and beautiful. I want to remember everything, she whispered. Jack nodded. Let's rewrite it together. She placed her hands on the keys. He placed his atop hers. Note by note, memory by memory, they played. Leia hummed from the corner soft and true. Outside, the sky cleared. Inside, a melody long buried had found its way home. A sharp knock interrupted the hush. Jack rose from the kitchen, where he'd been pouring Leia warm apple cider. The door clicked open. Graham Wexley stood there, designer coat, polished presence, and the guards behind him. Mr. Holden, he said smoothly, I thought it time we spoke face to face. Jack met him calmly. If this is about Charles, he can send threats, like everyone else does through the mail. Graham entered. Actually, this is from me, but now that I see her, perhaps this is easier. Jack stepped between Graham and Elise. You don't speak to her, you speak to me. Graham smiled thinly. Very well, Elise. You put yourself in a dangerous position. Abandoning your father's empire is noble, but naive. Investors and media thrive on scandal. Elise's voice was steady. I'm not afraid of truth anymore. Graham chuckled. Truth? You've handed sensitive files to a man who used to mop floors. A man with sealed military records and a dishonorable discharge. He's under investigation for trespassing on Whitmore properties. Jack's jaw tightened. That was abandoned property. I had permission from your 6-year-old. Graham smirked. You're bluffing. Elise's gaze snapped to Graham. No, I'm not. Graham glared. You're gambling your entire legacy for a fairy tale dream. Jack's voice was bass low, unyielding. Get out. Graham sneered. Love won't save you. Jack advanced. You may be used to breaking people with boardrooms. I once dared to patch wounds in under fire. You think your contracts scare me. You're just a man who's forgotten what honor means. Graham paused and then left. The door closed with a finality that felt like vindication. Elise exhaled. What did he mean sealed records? Jack sat, voice steady but weary. It's true. My files aren't clean because I refuse to lie. I was a field medic in Afghanistan. I uncovered orders that killed good men. When I blew the whistle, I was offered a choice, recant and get promoted, or vanish. You chose to vanish. I chose to live with myself. Elise absorbed that, then said quietly, I used to think integrity was a uniform. Now I know it's what you carry into hell and never put down. They sat in silence, the weight between them both visible, both light. That night, Jack found himself before the old community piano. His fingers hovered hesitantly above the keys before he began a tune Elise loved slow, unsure. Then her voice came, steady and imperfect behind him. He turned. She smiled. May I have this dance? There was no music, only the truth between them. There's no music without you. She stepped forward. Barefoot, they swayed beneath the skylight, stars peeking through cracks in the glass. Elise's head rested on his chest. I'm scared, she admitted. He held her. Me too. But I want this. And if we lose everything, Jack kissed her forehead. We haven't lost anything. We finally started living. Morning sun filtered through stained windows at the community center. Jack stood at a whiteboard in a small meeting hall scattered with blueprints and projections. His hands were callous, but his heart was afire. He looked at the plans in front of him, then at the open door. The future might be loud, uncertain, full of war and fire, but for the moment, there was peace, and that was more than enough. The room crackled with silent tension. Across from Jack sat Ms. Alvarez, arms folded like a steel gate, her sharp gaze brimming with skepticism. Beside her, a zoning official drummed a pen against his clipboard, each tap a measured expression of disdain. Elise sat off to the side still, regal, but seething just beneath the surface. Jack turned toward the projection, his voice firm yet trembling with purpose. This isn't a renovation, it's a resurrection. This building has been the soul of this neighborhood since the 1950s. We don't need to erase it, we need to remember why it ever mattered. Ms. Alvarez exhaled, lips tight. Mr. Holden, your passion is commendable, But your qualifications are non-existent. The zoning official interrupted. You're a janitor, a vet with a sealed record. No degree, no nonprofit credentials, no legal team, just a dream. Jack didn't blink. I'm also a father, a man shattered and rebuilt more times than he can count. I know what it means to salvage something broken and give it purpose again, whether it's a person or a building. The room froze in that truth. Then Elise spoke, her voice low but ablaze. Would you question him the same way if his name were on a gold plaque? Ms. Alvarez stiffened. This isn't personal. It is, Elise snapped. And since we're talking credentials, let's talk about Charles Whitmore, the man who greased the zoning wheels for decades, who traded permits for silence, leaving families homeless overnight. You approved his projects. Why? Silence. She pressed on, quieter but sharper. Because he disguised greed as generosity. Jack dresses hope in honesty. So tell me what scares you more. The silence cracked. Faces shifted. Doubt crept in. Then the door opened, and in walked Charles Whitmore. No silk tie, no power suit, just a beige coat and a predator's stillness, the kind that didn't need to roar to rule. Forgive the interruption, he said smoothly. I heard my daughter had taken an interest in civic projects. Elise stood, steel in her spine. You're not welcome here. I'm not here to debate, just to offer a reality check. He looked at Jack. That center, it was purchased 6 months ago by one of my holding firms. Quietly, legally. You're building dreams on land you no longer own. Jack's heart stopped. You lied. Charles shrugged. I invested. Elise stepped forward, fury barely contained. You targeted him. He smiled, cold and condescending. Sweetheart, you made your choices. I'm just reminding you of the cost. Jack turned to Alvarez. Is it true? She looked down, ashamed. It's complicated. The deal went through before. Your petition, there was no legal opposition. Jack's voice broke. So, what now? Elisa's eyes flared. No, not yet. She turned to her father. You once told me love makes people weak. That it's a distraction. I did. Charles replied. Then I hope you live long enough to see how wrong you were. Turning to Alvarez, she took a breath. I'll liquidate my Whitmore shares, all of them. That should buy the property back, fund the restoration. If I lose the name in the process, so be it. Jack's voice cracked. Elise, you don't have to. I want to, she said, trembling. My whole life was built on a lie. I'd rather lose it all and stand beside you than keep everything and stand for nothing. Silence fell, thick, sacred, the echo of truth hanging in the air. Ms. Alvarez finally looked up, eyes softened. We'll reconvene. We'll revisit everything. Charles said nothing. No threats, no rage. Just a quiet man watching the last vestiges of control slip through his fingers. That night, Elise sat on the center's front steps beside Jack. Inside, Leah slept, curled in a blanket, a half-eaten banana by her side. Jack turned the pendant over in his hand. I used to think this thing was cursed. Elise gave a faint smile. And now I think it was a promise. To what? To never stop believing that we were meant to find our way back. She leaned into him. And now that we have, now we fight to stay. She closed her eyes. With you, I will. And beneath the sky dusted with quiet stars, they sat together, two souls, scarred by life, but finally beating in harmony. A janitor, a daughter of legacy, and a love the world could no longer ignore. A few days passed in quiet relief until the envelope came. Jack sat on the playground bench as Leah giggled in the fading sun. Elise stepped from the center, heels soft against the concrete. A cream-colored envelope clenched in her hand. Jack stood. What is it? She said nothing, just handed it over. He read in silence. His shoulders sagged. They're suing me. Elise nodded. Intellectual property theft. They claim you used confidential Whitmore files to sabotage their business. I built everything from scratch. I know, but they're spinning the emails I forwarded. Zoning maps, they're twisting it all. Jack's voice was quiet. They're not trying to win. They're trying to bury me. They're coming after you, Elise. said, voice breaking, because they can't hurt me anymore. Jack turned away, watching Leah sing to herself in blissful innocence. You can't sell everything to protect me. You're not a burden, Jack. You're the reason I learned how to stand. He looked at her, aching. You gave up your name, your inheritance, and I'd do it again. You gave me truth. That's more than my name ever bought. What if we lose? Then we fall with our heads held high, unless you won out. Jack met her eyes. I've been through war, Elise. This is just another battlefield, and I'm not walking away. Not from you. 2 days later, Jack faced the tribunal. The room was cold, sterile, a battlefield of marble and paper. Whitmore's lawyers, polished and smug, unleashed their barrage. They hammered him with questions, maps, emails, timelines, all designed to trip him. Did he receive zoning documents? Yes. Were they marked confidential? No. Public archives. Verified. Did Elise offer financial help? No. Jack said. She offered belief, a smirk from the lead attorney. That's not legally binding. Jack leaned in. Neither is character. But I still carry it. The room hushed. Later, Elise arrived, a sealed folder in hand. What's that? A lawyer asked. A letter from the original zoning commissioner, dated before Whitmore's claim. The maps were public. My father misfiled it, probably on purpose. Jack blinked. You didn't have to. I did. That night. The rain drummed like nervous fingers on the roof. Jack sat in the rec room, fingers wrapped around the pendant. Elise entered with 2 mugs of cocoa. Still can't sleep, she asked. Not tired. You're lying. He smiled faintly. Maybe. They sat in the stillness until Jack spoke. My wife used to say, the hardest battles are the ones no one sees. Elise paused. I didn't know. Long ago. Cancer. Leah was still a baby. I'm sorry. She made me promise to raise Leah with hope, to still believe in people. I forgot that promise, until now. Elise placed her hand over his. You remembered when it mattered most. He turned to her. I never thought I'd feel this again. Trust, peace, love. You always deserved it, she whispered. You just needed someone to say it out loud. Jack pulled her close, and for the first time in a long while, let the world grow quiet. No courtrooms, no shadows, just the warmth of belief and the echo of a promise remembered. In a small courtroom that felt impossibly vast, Jack stood trial not just for a project, but for the life he dared to reclaim. The prosecutor painted him as a thief cloaked in sentiment. But when Jack took the stand, he did not defend himself with rage. I'm a janitor and a father. I lived down the street from that building. It saved my life more than once. I just want to return the favor. And somehow, beneath the fluorescent lights and sharpened voices, that was enough. Every day, Jack Holden watched the building decay, its walls cracking like the hearts of so many forgotten souls, himself among them. It stood as a silent witness to a world that moved on without remembering. It's becoming empty. He once said, just like the men I served with, just like me. He paused. The memory of his daughter lay surfacing. She had once asked with heartbreaking innocence, why do grown-ups give up so easy? He had no answer then, but that question clung to his soul like dust in an old corridor. So he made a choice not to surrender. Not again. In court, Jack stood alone, flanked by walls of polished wood and steely-eyed lawyers. Kendra Lyle rose, sharp-tongued and cool as ever, accused him of theft. Did you steal from Whitmore Holdings? She asked. Jack's voice, rough but steady, replied, everything I used was either public or given to me by Ms. Elise Whitmore. Nothing was stolen, nothing hidden. Kendra pressed harder. Did you live in a Whitmore building? Yes. And were you evicted? Yes. Her tone was mocking. Sounds like a grudge. Jack's jaw clenched. No. A lesson. A reminder that those in power forget the powerless. But that doesn't mean we stay. Forgotten. Kendra smirked. So it was revenge. He stared at her, his eyes a storm held at bay. No. This was redemption. The judge called a recess. Jack slumped into the bench, weariness pulling in his bones. Elise Whitmore walked up, and laid a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You did great," she whispered. "I'm not sure it matters," he murmured as she leaned closer. "Jack, it's never just about the verdict. It's about refusing to give up." His eyes searched hers, shadows flickering. "You really believe we have a chance?" "I believe in you," she said. And that was all. The next day, Elise took the stand, her posture poised, her voice calm as the sea before a storm. Kendra came for her with subtle barbs. "You gave Mr. Holden access to zoning files? They weren't confidential. They were part of a transparency report my father buried. So you're accusing your father of fraud?" "No, I'm revealing the truth he tried to silence." Kendra's next question cut like a knife. "Are you romantically involved with the defendant?" Elise didn't blink. "Yes." "Then how can we trust you're not biased?" Elise leaned forward. Her voice dropped, low and resonant. "Bias is hiding truth to protect power. Integrity is telling it anyway because it matters." Her words rippled through the courtroom like wind through tall grass. Even Kendra had no reply. That night, under the bruised purple canopy of the city sky, Jack and Leah sat on the rooftop of the center. She nestled against him, the world below a muffled murmur. "Are you going to jail?" she asked. Jack smiled faintly. "No, Bud, not for trying to help people. But they're mean. They're scared," he said. "Scared of people who remember what matters." She played with the pendant he always wore. "Mama said broken things can still shine." He looked down, voice trembling. "Yeah, baby, she was right." Then Elise appeared in the doorway, moonlight brushing her features. "They called," she said, smiling. "The suits dropped. The judge said there's no evidence. We're safe. The center is safe." Jack exhaled a breath he'd been holding. "For years." Leah's eyes widened. "We get to stay here forever." Elise knelt beside her. "It means we get to choose what forever looks like." Jack reached for Elise's hand. For the first time in years, it didn't shake. No more running. No more shadows. Just light. Just truth. Just them. Autumn had begun to brush the city in hues of burnt ochre and gold when the old community center reopened, not as a relic of loss, but a sanctuary of hope. The ribbon cutting was quiet. No cameras. No speeches written for claps. Just people, veterans with softened gazes, children with eyes wide as dawn, mothers, elders, and those who had been waiting to long to feel seen. The scent of pumpkin bread curled through the air. Jazz floated from a local quartet. Jack stood at the edge of the courtyard, clean blue shirt, boots dusty, tool belt slung with quiet pride. The pendant still gleamed at his chest. Leah, in a yellow sundress that danced in the breeze, held his hand tightly. Elise stood nearby, no longer the guarded heir she once was. Her hair fell loose in curls, her eyes alight with something soft and hard-earned peace. "Daddy," Leah whispered, "would Mama have liked this?" Jack looked at the colors, the laughter, the murals painted in hope she would have built. "It with her own hands," he said, "that made me repaint the whole thing. 'Cause the yellow was too pale." Leah giggled, and Jack crouched to meet her gaze. "She's the reason we're here. But you and Elise, you gave me the strength to wear this again." He touched the pendant. Elise approached, tucking a curl behind her ear. "You ready?" she asked. "For what?" She held up a card. "The new mission, the Whitmore Holden Center for Hope and Renewal. We're about to dedicate the plaque. I want you beside me." Jack hesitated. "Are you sure?" She met his eyes. "Jack, you didn't just rebuild a building. You helped rebuild me." They walked together to the front steps. The crowd hushed as Elise took the mic. "My father built empires," she began. "But he forgot something: people, their names, their struggles, and so did I." She looked at Jack. "Then I met a janitor who remembered everything that mattered. Not just how to fix pipes or patch walls, but how to listen, how to see people, how to love." The air held its breath. This center isn't charity. It's dignity. It's redemption. It's the promise that no one is too broken to begin again. She turned to Jack. "I used to think strength meant standing alone. But now I know it's holding someone's hand even when the world tells you to let go." Her voice faltered, full of feeling. "And I'm not letting go. Jack's throat thickened. He pulled the pendant from around his neck, his hand steady. This was my wife's. He said, it meant hope when I had none, love when I'd forgotten how, faith when I couldn't see the way forward. He turned to Elise. Now I want you to have it. She gasped. Jack, I can't. I'm not giving her away. I'm passing her forward. Because she'd want me to live, to love again. Elise reached out, trembling. She clasped the pendant to her heart. I'll never take this for granted. Behind them, the bronze plaque was revealed. The Whitmore Holden Center in memory of those we lost. In honor of those who chose to stay, applause burst like sunlight through rain clouds dot that night. Beneath the quiet sky, Jack, Elise, and Leia sat on the front steps in silence. Not the silence of absence, but of peace. Leia rested her head on Jack's knee. Elise leaned into his shoulder. It's funny, she whispered. I spent years chasing a legacy. Turns out, I just needed a home. Jack kissed her hair. Legacies are built brick by brick, soul by soul, and love, she asked softly. He looked down, his heart finally unburdened. Love is built by staying. Inside, the pendant now rested on display, surrounded by children's drawings and a note. Beneath it, love doesn't disappear. It transforms, and Jack Holden, who once saw himself as just a janitor fixing broken things, now stood as a man who had kept one promise and found another worth making. If this story stirred your heart, remember, healing often comes not in grand gestures, but in the quiet strength of those who choose to stay. Let that be your legacy.